when they start clapping, it's an indication for me to.
No, I gave you an expectation at the beginning only.
A very good morning to all of you. I'm not a very, that's what I was telling Anil, don't make me restricted to the system there, because, I mean, of course, you will get a chance to view the presentation, no doubt, because that's information, so it will be passed on to you. Rather, I would want to be amongst you, and it's more of an interactive session than just running the PPT, because I feel the PPT is just an add-on to rather than because if we interact with each other, it becomes more informative and more interactive. So let's do that way. Now today's session is typically going to be talking about and as Anil has already introduced, I don't want to give you them, but just a brief about me. Our association dates back to very long. We worked in previous companies together, and then we moved out at almost the same time, Anil, and we decided that it was I mean, we needed to do things our own way. So Anil has of course taken up with the test prep, and I've also started as you can see I grad global, and as the word literally translates, I graduate globally. That's what the message is, and it's of course for you people who are the best and by the best. So as far as the whole idea and the passion behind the education abroad goes, it dates back to about a decade or so when I was a student like you, and there was not much information. Of course, now if you look at it these days, and there's information overload, and that's also harmful to a student. Our times there was not much information. We had to spend days and days together in the American library, dig out information, get things written on paper. Didn't have internet, of course. So things were much more difficult. So at that point of time, I thought there should be a way where you could reach out to maximum number of students and see if you can streamline the whole application process in some way or the other in terms of the guidance that is going to be offered. So that's what I'm doing currently in terms of not only the application process, but of course one step that we always miss out in terms of doing the admission is first and foremost trying to introspect and find out in terms of what is the right career path that we want to look at in terms of what kind of courses, because there are n number of courses and you have like a lot of flexibility that's available to you as far as global education is concerned. So which one is the right course for you? You would have heard about so many courses, and that's also something that we'll try and touch upon today. Now, how many of you are work students in this set of students? Okay, so quite a lot. Yeah. So when you're looking at a global MBA typically, and that's what we're going to be talking about. I'll try to talk about both in general. Since you guys are most of you are MBA aspirants, we'll try to talk about the MBA and the management route abroad. What makes it different and how you need to go about it. Let me just give you a comparison between what happens in India and what happens abroad in terms of the process, so to say. Okay. What do you do when you're looking at doing an MBA in India? You look at taking the CAT, right? The exam, right? And everything else, falls back and comes up at a later stage. First, I need to get a good score and the good percentile on the CAT exam, right? And then the call, and then the interview, all the screening process happens later. Now, if you look at it, if you look at the education abroad, the global studies, any country for that matter, the whole process is going to be much more subjective. Okay, it's a three-pronged process. Let's put it that way. It's not just a scores; it's a much more subjective process in terms of the selection. Right. So there are three things that go into the application, which makes you a worthy candidate. First and foremost, you are looking at the tests, of course, your entrance exams, which would be the GMAT, and these days they also accept the GRE for the MBA program. And we talk about each of this in detail. Then you have, the whole presentation of your profile. You need to present your profile in some way or the other, right? So that's also a second, important step that we have there, right? So that's, your resume probably, the summary of your profile, then, somebody else has to talk about you, so people have to refer you and talk good about you. Good, isn't it? I mean, definitely good or bad, whatever, whichever way. So you need to have good number of recommendations, and of course presenting real life scenarios. I mean, you would have heard about statement of purpose, essays as well. So that's again something that we are looking at in terms of the your profile. What I mean. Now, if you're looking at the profile could include anything, anything and everything, and we'll see that in the presentation as well. I'll just give you in a nutshell. We could talk about extracurricular activities, your hobbies, okay, anything about maybe for those of you who have been working, you've been abroad on a business trip. That also could be an add-on. Okay, so anything and everything that makes you unique as a candidate as far as the B school selection is concerned. That's that definitely is going to help, and that's what you need to look at as far as when you're sending an application. How can you put yourself as come across, even if you look at ISB for that matter. How different are you from 10 other students or 100 other students? How can you stand out? Okay, and that's exactly what they're looking at in terms of and that's how people get admissions. Presenting the best best side of yourself. And lastly, one, the entrance test. The second is about my own profile. The last but not the least, how do I select those universities? I mean, that's again one chunk of information that always remains unattended to, or rather gets done haphazardly. How would you do that? I mean, any thoughts? How would you normally look at universities? Okay, so ranking. Yeah.
Location, cost effectiveness.
Very good. Okay.
Alumni strength.
Alumni strength. Okay, where the people have been placed. Yeah.
Your Mongolian entrance was GRE or GMAT, so you know whether or not you are.
Yeah, that could be one of the factors again. Not necessarily the only, but then again, that could be one of the factors. What else? ROI. Yeah. Correct. Anything else? So we have ranking. Somebody said ranking. Somebody said the scores that you're making. Somebody said the specializations. Okay. Then the alumni network that you have. People who have passed out. Where have they been? Where have they gone? Ended up? What else? Yeah, the cost, the location. There would be many more factors. So what I wanted to put across here was, when you're looking at the the selection of the universities, I mean it's basically going to be profile based. You really can't generalize. Now, for example, the gentleman here said, what's his name? Sharat said ranking. Now, if ranking was the sole criteria, then my job becomes very easy. All of you sitting here, I mean anybody would aspire to the top 20, isn't it? So then that's that's the key criteria. We are not looking at anything else. We just apply the simple rule of one size fits all. That doesn't happen, right? So we just pull out the top maybe 20 or top 50 and just list them down. It's very simple, but that's not how we are looking at it. Okay, because there are these other things that we have to look at, like what he pointed out and said that okay, their scores also, my scores also need to fit in. And then what like she said, the courses that I want to do. For example, if I work in supply chain or I work in operations, so work in finance, then whether that university offers that specialization, which is also very important. See, the whole purpose for this whole this assignment is basically because I want to study. I'm not just going there to wasting time, money, or to just while away time. There is a whole purpose behind doing this assignment. It's basically to study. And if I'm not getting what I want to study, then it's a worthless effort, isn't it? So which means your specialization also becomes very important. Now, if I were to look at these two factors, okay, let's look at ranking and let's look at specialization. Then I would definitely weigh specialization more. All of you agree? I mean, this is a very debatable topic, but again, I'm not saying that yes. I mean, if I'm looking at the top 20, let's take an example. In these top 20, I have maybe 4 or 5 schools which have the specialization that I want to study. I am better off looking at those universities, okay, compromising a little bit on the ranking. Maybe they are not in the top 5. Maybe they are in the 10, 15, that kind of ranking. And taking it from there. But at least I am assured that I am ready to do the course that I want to. Isn't it? So that is how we are looking at it in terms of the specialization. And of course, getting to do the specialization that you want to do is going to be worthwhile because it's going to add value to your career. That's the whole point, right? I mean, if you are going to study that specialization, then you will be able to progress in your career path, isn't it? Is this clear? Yeah. So this is in nutshell. We have these 3 steps. Now, how do you put this in a timeline fashion? Every day when I speak to a student who comes to counseling, I keep telling them that look, it's not enough that you basically have this plan in mind. You also need to know how to time it because it's a lengthy process. Universities also need time to evaluate your profile based on certain parameters, and there are so many, a list of it. So you need to give it enough time. So which means you need to plan the whole process and put all these 3 steps into a timeline, right? You need to first and foremost think about the test, which takes about on an average 2 to 3 months. Now, since you guys have already started preparing on CAT, okay, this would be just an add-on test for you, and that is the reason Anil and I thought that probably this would be the right platform to address you. And since you guys have already done an aptitude test preparation, I mean any aptitude test for that matter would have verbal skills and quantitative skills. It's just the approach that is different. So if I have to look at GMAT or GRE for that matter, they both have quant and verbal. It's just that the pattern of the test is going to be slightly different. How I approach the test, maybe maths would be comparatively easier for you, much easier, because you don't have so much of data sufficiency and so much of data interpretation there in GMAT. But on the other hand, maybe you will have to scale up a little bit on your verbal skills, because it will be a little higher in terms of the level of English, and it's American English that we are again talking about. So in terms of preparation, maybe another month or 15 days is is going to be good enough, I would say, if you know the differences across. Now, what's the right time to take the test? These tests are conducted all the year round, every day. Okay, it's not like you have a certain window like you have for CAT. You would be taking the test any time of the year. It's just depends on how well prepared you are, and it also depends on when you need to take the test, depending on the universities that you want to be targeting. Okay, so which means if you look at the timeline, most of the universities. Now let's take an example of your Indian School of Business in Hyderabad. The second round of deadline is coming up on November 30th. Okay, now they would expect you to have your GMAT score in place. I think it was very. So they would expect you to send in the entire application, which is the summary of your profile, your resume, there's a set of essays, everything, plus your scores. Okay, so if you have to be able to achieve that, then you need to be able to get all these things done before 30th November.
Is it really that specialization dominates over this ranking? Is it really? Somebody wants to do CSE from some college and metallurgical from IIT. So which has the more weightage?
No, I didn't get a question. Could you repeat that?
That she told that specialization and that boy told that ranking.
See, then let's look at it this way. Okay, you guys have all done your bachelor's. Now, what does bachelor's do to us? It just gives us a foundation in any particular subject, right? So you are learning a core subject. It could be computer science, it could be electronics, any of that. Now, the whole purpose of doing an whether it's an MBA or a master's program, okay, is to specialize. Because master's is basically to equip you with certain specialized skills. And otherwise, why do you think these companies are going to hire you? Let's look at an example. There's Cisco which is looking for some guy network. Let's say somebody for networks. Okay, and I have 2 people there, 2 candidates going for an interview there. One of these guys has done a computer science masters, but he's done it from the top 5. Let's say Carnegie Mellon, let's give a name. Okay. There's another guy who's also done a master's, but he's done a computer science master's in networking. Let's say from Pennsylvania State University. Now, whom do you think Cisco is going to prefer?
Networking.
The networking guy, obviously, that's your answer. Because see, companies do not want to put in time, money, and effort in giving them skills-based training to these people, isn't it? I mean, they would want somebody who's coming ready-made with those skills. And then, if that is the case, then I'm okay with paying this guy more. So, which means you have two advantages. One, I get to study in depth about the subject. Second, I also get more value for my education. So my earning potential, my marketability in the market, as far as my career prospects are concerned, increases.
First thing we select the US or some abroad universities for better universities, for top universities, not for the course. And more people not select for the course.
Because brand value matters a lot.
Agreed. I'm not saying that we are going to compromise and look at some wayward university. Okay, but when I'm looking at, see, ranking is just a guidance tool. That should not be the sole criteria for selection. That is how I'm looking at it. I mean, I would definitely want to get into Harvard. Okay, but again, I should also, I mean, I'm not saying that we don't have Harvard material in this class, but again, I should also analyze and see whether Harvard is going to really help me satisfy my career goals down the line. Maybe 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, is Harvard really for me? Is it going to bring that value to my career? So, for example, if I were to tell you Harvard is an entrepreneur based, it gives a lot of importance to entrepreneurship. So, if you're not the kind of person who has a long-term goal of starting something on your own, okay, then it's pointless, right? So, which means that Harvard is going to have many more electives in entrepreneurship. So, just because Harvard is the top 1 or top 2 of the colleges, I'm not achieving anything in terms of my career goals. I'm not saying don't look at ranking, but on a comparison, it cannot be, like I said, you can't have a one size fits all, right?
Even specialization comes in third and fourth semesters. First semester we have the same semester, according to India.
You learn it only in the second year, but you should have a criteria. See, specialization is your criteria to put your profile across. On what basis are you going to, even India, if you look at it, there are about, some, thousands of universities. I mean, if you look at abroad, then there are many more. So what is my criteria? How am I going to look at those universities? That should be my criteria of narrowing down. And when I'm presenting my profile, okay, I'm better off presenting my profile, in a way where I'm, I mean, I know that, I'm the best. I can't say, okay, I've done, I've worked all my life in IT and then I want to do finance now. You will fall short there because then you're competing with guys who have, that finance exposure and experience. Of course, I'm not saying the flip side of it is you could look at changing the, specialization. But there's a way you need to put it across, So, having said that, you need to understand how a career is built again. Let me just backtrack there. There are two ways, One is that, you guys basically are looking at industry-specific career. Okay, I want to be in the IT industry, no matter what. There is, another way of looking at the career that I am, a domain expert. I don't want to let go my domain expertise. I'm okay with, I'm sticking on to my domain expertise. I'm okay with working in any industry. For example, now supply chain, operations, these are upcoming fields. But these guys are required in all industries. So I'm okay with, compromising on any industry. I wouldn't say compromising, I'm flexible about the industry. But on one hand, I don't want to give up on what kind of, specialization in core domain expertise that I've gained in whatever 2-3 years that I've worked. So there are two ways of looking at, the career. So you need to be very clear about that. Okay. So of course, yes, the school that you're going to pass out from will always remain with you as a tag. That yes, I'm going to be proudly saying that I'm an alumnus of such and such university. But at the cost of what? That also you need to decide. Whether I would compromise, on the course that I want to study. Because at the end of the day, even if I get to Harvard, what am I going to? I'm just going to be, lost there. because I won't have what I want to look at, isn't it? Is this clear? I think that answers. I'm not saying that okay, we compromising totally on ranking. Ranking yes, but ranking in the right sense. It can't be only ranking. Okay. So that's about the whole way of looking at the three things. Now timeline, like I said, the 30th November, December. These are the earliest deadlines that you have. Now what do you mean by deadlines? The universities would expect you to send all these documents, your profile, your scores, okay, and your application form before that deadline, so that they would be able to scrutinize your profile. If you are worthy, then they will give you an interview call. Now, how does a person get an admission? What are these admission criteria that really matter? Like what we have discussed, everything, because it's a subjective selection process. It's not just test scores. I mean, most of the time students keep telling me that let me do the GMAT, let me do the GRE, and then I'll think about the rest of the thing. Unlike what we have in India in terms of the Indian MBA process, selection process, here the process is slightly different. See, had it been only score dependent, then you could have just sent them the scores, and then the universities have told would have told you that look, I don't think you need to apply because your scores are much lower than what, just like what I am doing, isn't it? That's not how it works. You send the scores, you send them the entire application form with all those documents that we discussed, okay, and then and of course there will also be an interview. Most of these schools would have an interview as well, and then a decision is made whether or not you are a worthy candidate. Okay, so if you send the application by December, you would hear from the university by about February, March of next year whether or not you are eligible for that admission. It takes about 6 weeks to 8 weeks for them to decide. So by the time you know about your CAT results, you would also be able to know about this thing. I mean, you could keep your options open. That's also possible, right? So which means that you have many more options to choose from. Then you can always weigh the pros and cons in terms of whatever parameters that we discussed. Now about these admission criteria, one is my academics. Okay, it's not the percentage that matters. It's the consistency in the degree that we're looking at. Somebody is still. So, basically it's not just percentage that we're looking at. I mean, being a university topper of that kind, it's the consistency. So if you've done 4-year degree, how consistent have you been? It's not only engineering that matters. Again, because I don't want a class of 200, 500 students, all engineers. I want diversity. That's how the B schools would look at. So I would want doctors, I would want engineers, I would also want lawyers, pharmacists, all of that, good amount of mix of all this. Okay, because that brings whole lot of perspective, different perspective to the classroom discussions. Right? So academics from the point of view of these aspects. Consistency, of course, okay, and the diversity point of view. Yeah.
So the consistency means basically in India what happens in 10th and intermediate the percentage will be very high. It will be about 1 and engineering it will drop to 70 and 60.
Yeah, but we are looking at only the graduation point of view, or if you have done MTech or masters further from there.
In graduation point of view means all of 4 years they will see or else?
They will look at the last 2 years, the last 60 hours, just like what your university does. The last 2 years of your degree. That's what they would be looking at. That should be consistent. But typically, yes, there should not be too many ups and downs. Not too many backlogs. See, because what are they trying to judge here is basically how you would be able to cope with a rigorous degree like an MBA or a master's. So if you're going through, if you have not been able to do that here, then how best can you do it abroad? That's what they want to judge from this. Okay. Then of course your scores. So again, now let me be very clear here. As far as your scores is concerned, please be very clear that there are no cutoffs. Okay, none of these universities, you can look at the websites, you do not have cutoffs for the universities. Okay, It is an average score that would be displayed there.
So for the GMAT, there won't be any cutoffs for the GMAT?
It is out of 800. A good competitive score would be 700. 700 out of 800. But again, that does not, if you have a 650, that does not mean you are rejected from the pipe. Okay. So there's always a room for plus or minus 50 any which ways, because it's an average that they're taking in terms of whatever is the lower limit and the upper limit, right? Then we are also looking at the rest of the profile. So we have your academics, you have your scores, and then you have your rest of your profile, which could be your work experience, which could be your extracurriculars. You've been a good sports person, anything for that matter. Your hobbies, knowing a second language, having traveled abroad. Okay, any of those skills that you can present there. Now, how do you present this? Of course, through your resume. You're going to be sending your resume as a summary. There will be a whole lot of questions that you need to answer as a part of the application, which are also very important, and I told you about it. Like a career goal statement, or there would be certain number of essays which would talk about your strengths, accomplishments, then what are your career goals, short term, long term. Okay, so that's, or why you're looking at this particular B-score to apply. Okay, I remember on ISB, this year they've had these questions. What do you think, how is ISB going to help you, in your career progress 3 years from now? So which means you need to think through that. I mean, are we just looking at ISB because it's here in Hyderabad, you've heard from your seniors? Is it just, a herd mentality, or it's just one of the, schools that is available here in India? That should not be the approach. You should be able to pinpoint and say that, look, these are my reasons for which, I'm looking at applying to ISB. I mean, it should be a two-way process. ISB is also gaining value from my candidature. At the same time, I am also gaining equally from, applying to ISB and getting, a seat there in terms of my career progress. And that's what you're trying to, present in the application through these essays. So these would be real life experiences that you had. Some talking about your failure, talking about your success, talking about, a challenging situation. These could be some of the questions that they have, and there will be some word limit that you need to look at. Okay, so that's how the whole presentation, and of course recommendation letters. Now, how do people think about you? What do they think? What's their opinion? I mean, if you were to look at your seniors, at your workplace or your academics, at your college, what is their viewpoint? How are they looking at it? Okay, is there do they think you are the best? How do they rate you among maybe 100 other students? So that's basically what they're looking at. Now, these are the admission criteria, all said and done. Now you might wonder how how each one of this is important. Like I said, there is no rule book which says this is the cutoff for this course. When you look at these admission criteria, since it's a subjective selection process, simply said it is a sum total of all this. Please bear this in mind. So, you might come back and say, ma'am, I have not had very good academics. Fine. Work hard on the GMAT or the GRE. Try and see if you can compensate there. Okay, because in this selection process, you always have room for compensation. It's not just, just because you don't have 50% aggregate in your academics, it's not like they're going to dump your application in the reject file. They'll still look at it, they'll look at your GMAT, they'll look at your rest of your, maybe you have not been, somebody who could do things by rote. Maybe that's the reason you did not score well. But when it comes to hands-on, your practical skills have been really good. You have done good projects, you have presented papers. So these things could add value, isn't it? So they're going to look at all of that, and that's going to be reflected in your statement of purpose as well as your essays that you're going to be writing, right? And which you're going to be sending. So just remember one thing: admission criteria, it is the sum total of all these factors. Okay. So which means each bit of your information is going to be greater than the whole. I mean, if you were to put it in a mathematical equation. So little by little, whatever you have is going to be adding on. Right? So that's how the admission criteria is looked upon, and that is how you get the admission. Now, if you were to look at scholarships, same thing. I mean, the scholarships would come to people who based on the merit, and merit which makes a superlative profile of all these parameters that we have discussed, right? Yes, is that clear? So that's basically how we look at the whole process in a nutshell. Now many a times, I mean, when I've been counseling students in about over around 2,000 odd students that I've come across, most of the times there are few places where I've seen students facing a lot of problems. First and foremost is the selection of the universities, which is done very randomly. It's never done in a scientific way. I mean, you would have heard from your friends, seniors, cousins. I mean, you would have a lot of those who would have gone. And believe it or not, I mean, when it comes to sending your application, you will get a lot of free advice. And there's internet to confuse you with a lot of information overload. So see that you put in your priorities. I mean, say, for example, in your case, if you think ranking is at most important, but at the same time you want to balance it out with the course, definitely. Otherwise, it doesn't help you. So see how best you want to prioritize these factors that we have discussed. Okay, but the selection of the universities has to be done very scientifically. It is not what I want only, please. And we don't want to be a mean machine, right? Human beings are, they say, always finding out meaning out of everything, right? So if what do I gain? That's not how you look at it. You have to look at it in a two-way process. I mean, whether I as a person am suitable, my candidature is also suitable for that university. So it's a two-way process, and that's what is called profiling, the best profiling university. And which is why I spoke to you about the career path. I mean, it's not that I'm doing this MBA just for the heck of it, because I have 10 other friends who have done it, and which is why I want to do it. But I have a whole purpose, that yes, 2 years down the line, this is what I'm going to look at it, and this is the only university which will help me achieve it. There's no better university. Right? And then there are different things, 1 year course against 2 year course, depending upon your individual profile. Okay, it's not like a 1 year course teaches you anything less than the 2 year course. It's the same, because there would be universities which will be offering you both. Again, it's tailor-made for individual profiles, depending on the work ex level, depending on the profile that you have. Maybe if you are a manager already, you are managing a small team, then you might not want to go for a 2 year program at all. You are better off looking at a 1 year program, because you already know what management is. All you then need to do is retool yourself, probably look at that global exposure, and that's the reason why you would want to do an MBA. So then guys with 4-5 years work experience, they are better off looking at a 1 year program. Right? Because if you look at a 2 year program, then that comes with internships. Right? So the people who have 2 years work experience would be the ones, like 1 or 2 years work experience would be the ones who would benefit from a 2 year program. Or the guys who want to change from one subject to another, they would benefit from a 2 year program, because it gives you time to first understand what management is, and then specialize in the second year. So it gives you enough time to first know what finance is, what marketing is, and then get to the specialization level. But if you already worked and you know the subject, you're better off looking at even a 1 year program. Then internship does not become the prime focus, because again getting a job is not the priority there, because you already have that work experience, and that is the reason why universities abroad would insist on you having 2 years of work experience. Understand this. I mean, they would expect you to have that industry exposure before you actually apply for the MBA. I mean, if you don't have that industry exposure here in your own country, then it's not going to be very easy for you to be able to adapt to a culturally different place, isn't it? Not only in terms of the language and all that, but business culture as well, right? So which is why they expect you to come with some work experience when you apply for a visa. So that's the reason why they have this stringent requirement of having 2 years. But that does not mean freshers cannot apply. I mean, there are different types of courses that you could look at. There are courses like MIS. You have Master of Engineering Management if you are an engineer. You could also look at MS Management. That could be one of the options that you could look at instead of doing an MBA. But these are also equally good that you can probably look at. Okay, as far as the courses are concerned. So even freshers would fit the bill. Shouldn't be a problem there.
What about the early entry option?
Which one?
Early entry option.
Yeah, there is an early entry option.
Early entry, where you need to, basically apply it with less number of. It's a new program comparatively. I don't think that should be a problem. Later on. Yeah. Once you have the required, work experience. It's basically, you qualify for that, ISP program, the PGP program, which is meant for people with 2 years work experience. There is also a program for freshers, which is a YLP, Young Leaders program, where you start off in the pre-final year itself. You start the process, but after you work for 2 years, then you go, join the PGP program. So these are facilities for you to, actually be able to, overcome that two years work experience. Now in the YLP program, the thing that is different is that you go on the campus intermittently for 3 or 4 times. You interact with the faculty members, you interact with other students, so you get that whole experience. But it will just be a part-time experience that you are doing. But while you are working full time, for 2 years elsewhere, so you are building that work experience as well. Okay. So let's just look at the any questions. I'll just quickly take you through the presentation, which you are eagerly waiting for. Yeah. So that's what we had discussed in a nutshell, right? I hope you got the gist of it all. Correct? Any questions still? Or we use the benefits of the degree? Oh, I can see that smile. Dollars, huh? And now with the dollar rate going up, I guess that's even better. So you are increasing, you have an increase in potential. Yes, of course, career enhancement for those of you working and then applying. Okay, definitely you are looking at growing in your career by leaps and bounds. Expansion in terms of the career, emerging fields. You have lots and lots of options in terms of the specialization that you can choose from. Like I said, you have retail, you have supply chain, you have operations, and lot many more that you could look at. And of course, at the end of the day, you end up becoming a global resource. Right? Even if you decide you want to come back to India, you get a red carpet treatment, right? So yes, right? Boys are blushing already. I can already guess in what sense they're thinking. Huh?
Green cards.
Green cards you want, or you want a good wife? I was thinking of those lines, right? Don't you think that also becomes possible? I mean, imagine you having, there are two people that again when you look at the competitiveness in the not only in the job market, in the in the personal sphere, isn't it? Right? One coming from US and one not coming from US. Who has better rating? What, girls? What do you think? So you end up becoming a global resource. And again, one very important thing, and that is the the prime aspect that you gain from whichever B school you apply to, whether it's global or in India, it's it's the networking, and that is the reason why you need to pick the universities very carefully, because you get to interact with the like-minded people. Okay, there would be people who would have similar goals like you in terms of their career. So which is why it becomes very important, whom you are going to be interacting with, and that's the reason, normally I wouldn't suggest people to go for online courses, because you don't get, you miss out on that important aspect of networking. You don't get to meet people, you don't get to interact with them. See, MBA is more about, people skills. It's about your, interacting with the faculty, interacting with the students, your peers, okay, the alumni, all of that, and that's the experience which you're gaining from. It's not the bookish knowledge that you're gaining from. Please remember this. Okay, you become a whole different person because of the networking. If you're just going to stay put, with yourself, not interact with people, then I don't think there's going to be any value add there, right? Then you're learning only theory, and that becomes like more of your bachelor's kind of level of study. So it's more about networking, definitely. And of course, for those of you who want to look at, I'm bored of IT now, let me look at finance. Career switch is also a possibility because you get an overview of all the areas of managing an organization. So if you're looking at changing over, this could be your platform. We have discussed this, right? It should, ideally you should be starting, so for example, if you are looking at the next year, let's say the August, September of 2014, right? That's the fall intake, which is what normally universities are open for. Your deadlines would start in the previous year, so which is October, November, December, and there are these rounds of deadlines that you have. Now, what do you mean by the deadlines? Like I emphasized earlier, you need to send everything to the university, your scores, your application form, plus the essays and everything completed in the application form. All of this needs to be reaching. So for example, you have a deadline, let's say 1st December. You need to get the application form filled and sent to the university by the midnight of that deadline to be eligible for that round. If you miss that round, probably you could look at the next round. As far as we international students are concerned, you have to stick to the second round. You can't go beyond that. Because March, April would be a little too late for you as far as the visa is concerned, because you do not have enough time to work on the visa documents. So December, Jan is what we are looking at, and which is again possible. I mean, given the timelines that we are going to follow. Yes. So that's then what all do we need to do is what we have seen. So let's look at the steps involved. We've already discussed this, but just a repeat of if those of you want to take down, can do that, not a problem. Anything specifics? You need to research on the universities, because you need to be aware of which universities. Now this is again something that you need to be doing much before you take the GRE GMAT, not keep it for later. Let me first take the test and then I'll see. That's a standard way of looking at it. Instead, why not work the other way around? I mean, aren't you doing CAT with an aim to get into IIMs? Isn't it? So same thing applies here. I have a dream B school in mind. I'm going to focus on what is the requirement for that B school and work backwards. That's a better approach because you always have a clear focus there. Say for example that university requires 700, 720 kind of score, and these are the things that they are looking at. Maybe international exposure is a must. Or they want you to know a second language. You need to know French or you need to know German, some foreign language. But if I don't have any of these, then it's a wasted attempt. Just because it is in the top 10 doesn't mean I need to apply because I don't satisfy the requirements. Isn't it? I mean, I'm better off looking at some other university then in that case. So research on the university is very important. Another important aspect is many a time students waste that attempt and the free facility that is given. I'm not sure how many of you know that when you take the GRE or GMAT, they provide you with a free facility to send your scores. On the GRE day, you could report your scores to 4 universities of your choice, provided you know which 4 are suitable for you. On the day of the GMAT also, you could send your scores to 5 universities, okay, based on your scores and based on the other details that we have discussed. But you should be well aware of these, right? Which are the options? What kind of courses are available? What kind of universities are available? Which location am I looking at? All these things should be clear to you before you take the test. And then of course you prepare for the test, right? After you have got a sizable list of universities based on whatever parameters we discussed, Like, maybe your specialization, some feel ranking, some feel location, some feel cost is a concern, so let me look at cost. Whatever parameters you feel are, a priority for you, you have a sizable list, let's say 25 to 30 universities. Then, based on my scores, I can further narrow down. Maybe, come to about 8 to 10 universities, isn't it? And that could be, the final set that I'm looking at. So, look at the universities, in a very much more scientific way, is what I'm trying to, convey here. Yeah? Not just, random pick and choose. Maybe what is suitable for him might not be suitable for him because maybe your career goals are different, or maybe, your profile is much more different from each other. So, you really can't, use a standard list here. Yeah? Then the documentation. Most of the times everything else is done well. You select the universities, you have a very, very nice score, but you present the application very haphazardly. You don't send your recommendation letters on time. You submit the application form the last minute when the server is almost about to crash. I mean, that happens. I mean, that's, there could be a lot of technical problems that you would face on the last, when the deadline is almost near. So try and avoid these things because that will also reduce a lot of anxiety. You give enough time to your recommendations, recommenders to send their, send their letters well before the deadline. Give them at least 15 days because they are also busy. Okay, fill the application form properly. Write your essays properly. Don't send essays without counting the word limit that has been required of you, or with a lot of grammatical errors. See that you get some professional help or get them read. Okay. Again, your essays is not just a matter of English. It's how you present your ideas. So if they are asking about career goals, you are talking about something else. What's the point? They are very clearly saying, how does this B-School help you in furthering your career? And you start talking about ISB and its infrastructure. So you need to know what you need to mention there, as far as the question is concerned. Okay, and of course stick to whatever restrictions they have about word limit and everything else that is given. So remember one thing: essays and are not just a test of your English language. It's not using flowery vocabulary that's going to impress them. It's about how you present your incidences and how you convey to them that in spite of all those hardships or whatever experiences that I've had, how I have emerged as a leader. At the end of the day, that is what they believe in, right? I mean, managers have to be good leaders, right? So, how do you convey, through those experiences? And that experience and your learnings are important to them. And that's also what they are going to be asking you in an interview once you qualify. Okay, and that's basically what, how you need to. Again, these essays and these SOPs cannot be done overnight, guys. You need to give at least 15 days. I mean, you would be surprised if I were to ask one of you to come to the stage and talk about yourself. You could do that for the whole day, right? I mean, one day is also not enough if you have to talk about yourself. But when you start writing about yourself, what happens? Are you not capable of writing about yourself, or you get lost because of the words? What is it? Try doing that. I'm sure even in your in your Indian school applications you're going to be writing essays. Just one simple question about why do you want to apply for an MBA, and what are your goals? It's a very simple question, a very standard question as far as even the Indian schools are concerned, and universities abroad. I mean that it needs a lot of introspection. You need to chalk out the details, redo them, reread, rewrite, all of that. It cannot be done overnight. Also avoid copying, taking stuff out of internet, because they will be able to catch you. And there are lots of software which will get these things out. So don't take things from seniors as an easy way out. Okay, see that it's your own original work, because the moment you copy, you will not be able to express yourself in the interview. It will not correlate. Probably this guy has written, I want to be a strategic consultant. Then you write the same thing, and then you are not able to know what is a strategic consultant. You have no clue. And they keep on asking okay, so strategic consultant, tell us what next? What are you trying to do? what do you mean by strategic consultant? What do you intend to do? Okay. So these things, you will definitely get caught unawares as far as the application is concerned if you copy from people. If they are not your own original ideas. It happened to one of my students. He wanted to do something in supply chain, and he talked about things like carbon dating and stuff like that. And when I started reading his essay, I said, look, hello, this doesn't sound like you. Are you sure you want to mention all this? And finally, when you go for the interview, the person who was speaking to him on the interview was an expert in supply chain. And if these things happen to you, you're going to be lost. So, they would ask you these kinds of questions in detail again, because they want to know, whether, it's what you've written is what you speak again, right? So, be very sure about, how you're presenting your application as well, and that's your documentation, then applying on time, and then again, the final selection. Very important. You have some 3-4 admits. Very good. Now, what do? You're lost again. Too much is also not good, isn't it? But again, you need to weigh the pros and cons. There again comes in, what are your priorities? Whether it's cost, whether it's location, what is it? Whether it's, the final placement or it's the country, whether you have plans of settling down or your girlfriend is there, that's why you want to go there. Yes, of course, don't laugh on me over it. I have people, this year itself, they had those constraints. I would want to apply to this university because, she's already there, so, I would want to see that, I get there. So what a compromise. And I had the other way around also, a girl compromising because her boyfriend was not able to score as much, so they wanted to end up getting into one particular university. Again, your priorities, you need to put them in order. So, all said and done, your reasons should be very clear there. Final selection again becomes very important in terms of how you look at the admit in the long run. So I'll just give you a quick example. There's this one guy few years down the line, and he was for a master's application. He was wanting to apply for wireless communication. Electronics guy, worked in Saskin. I'm sure all of you heard about Saskin. In Bangalore. Worked for about 1.5 to 2 years, and then his score was in the earlier pattern was around 1170 or so. Not a great score as far as GRE is concerned. So we were, in a dilemma of, what university. So we just selected a few universities in US as well. And just for backup, we also said, I told him, look, as far as telecom is concerned and wireless is concerned, why don't you also explore Europe? Because, that's, a good hub, and you have very good courses there. And you have a lot of companies, which are headquartered there. Nokia being one. Okay. So we applied to the normal, Virginia Tech and all of those, University of Texas, Dallas, whatever you've heard about, in telecom. He did get into a couple of them, as far as US was concerned. He also got into one other university in Finland, which is, Helsinki Institute of Technology. Okay. Now we weighed all the pros and cons. Of course, when you look at US, it's a 2-year program. There's no two ways about it. You would have to do the masters for 2 years. And he got into one of the good ones. Virginia Tech is quite well rated because, of course, of his work experience in Saskin, that boosted his profile. So he did get there, and he got into Helsinki as well. Now, when we were weighing the pros and cons, and he decided he wanted to go for HIT because of a lot of reasons. One, that it was a 15-month to 18-month program. Worst case scenario, let's say if he doesn't get, because Europe again placements becomes a concern, all that, we've been hearing because of the labor laws. He could still come back and work for Saskin. But again, Nokia being headquartered there was a prime reason where we took the call that and if you look at Helsinki again, a lot of projects in Helsinki are funded by Nokia. So that was again one of the advantages there. So you have that advantage, plus cost wise and duration wise also it works out better. So these were certain things that you need to take into consideration when you are coming to the final university selection, wherever you're looking at. So it's not just a country. It's always that we think, okay, US is always synonymous with going abroad. But again, these days I think you have so many options. And again, the second thing was, as far as the Helsinki Institute of Technology was concerned, the course was a master's in wireless communication. So that was again an advantage. It was an MS in wireless communication. So like I told you, it's a specialized track. So when it looks at when you're looking at his career opportunities, he is always going to be picked over and above other guys who would have done this in electronics, right? So that's the way you need to look at the final selection. And of course the visa. Now again guys, visa is not about money. It's not only about money. It's an equation. It's a matrix. Most of the students dread the visa, thinking that if I don't have the money, then I will be rejected the visa. It's about the whole matrix. It's about which university you got, what score, and these visa guys are smart enough because they know how to correlate everything. I'll give you an example. Two ways of looking at it. A student who's got a very good score, a 320 on the GRE, but still going to a Lorem college because he thinks it's easier for me to get there. Maybe I might also get some scholarships if I apply to a Lorem university. Gets rejected because the visa guy is smart. He knows that behind doing this there is a different way of thinking, because he knows as a student whole idea of applying is just to get there. Who would want to compromise? And a guy with a 320 score wouldn't want to compromise and get into a university which is not even top 100. So which means his ulterior motive, whatever you call, motive of getting into, it's just to get into the country, right? Because he's compromising so much. He could have got into any better university, and then again on top of it, probably he's applied only to 1 or 2 universities. He's not even looked at 4 or 5 options. That's again going to be very lethal for your visa application. So how you answer, how you convince the the visa officer is also very important there. So it's not just about money. It's about your academics. It's about which university you get into, and the balance of the whole profile. That's important there. Okay. So that's something that you need to remember. And this is the process, the process in a nutshell, that timeline wise. Ideally we should have started in the previous year, that's this year beginning, but we are still not late. Like I said, because you guys have done almost 3/4 of your work because you've been preparing on CAT. So test prep wise you are done. Now all you need to figure out is how different is this other test going to be. How you need to brush up on that, and start with the applications. You still have the time as far as the deadlines are concerned, as we have seen previously.
What are the problems in summer round?
In
Summer round. You opt for summer round.
in
Third round of summer round. So in summer.
yeah, if you say for example March, you basically apply in March and April. University takes about 2 months to decide, right? So which means by the time you get your admission, it will be about May, June. So when will you work on your financial documents, go for the visa interview?
Meanwhile, then we can ask for dollars. Only visa.
You don't know whether the university has accepted you. After the 3rd round, you still have to do the interview. Interview call itself will come in 6 weeks, let's say. So by May you will get an interview call. Then after that they will let you know whether you are qualified. So most of the classes for the universities will start in August. So it's always better to give, and also the I-20, I mean the visa documents for them to send it to you, it takes a while. They're going to send it by normal post. It takes about 3-4 weeks for you to get them. So just to be on the safe side. And then again, another very important aspect is that maybe there are no seats left. We are just competing for nothing. Maybe there are very few seats left there. So it's always better to be in the first pile. But since we are not able to do the first pile, maybe at least the second pile. Because as we go, progress, as far as we go in the later rounds, your number of seats are also diminishing. You are competing for lesser seats. That's also important. And these are the practical, difficulties that are there. Again, where to study? I told you location is again based on your own priorities, but like I said, depends on location, duration. So if you're looking at US, most of the courses are 2-year duration. MBAs also. If you're looking at Canada, again they are also 2 years, but other countries they are 1.5 year duration. Okay. It does not mean that US degrees are better than the other countries. You do have the world's best universities abroad across the globe. Okay, it's just that that's how they're structured. In US, what happens is in the summer you probably do internships. You have a summer break where you do internships. That is the reason why it stretches across to 2 years. Whereas in these other countries, you don't do any summer internships. You do the course through and through. So which is why the duration is lesser. But it does not mean that these are rated better than the others. Right? Is this here? So each place has a different way of looking at it. Then in terms of location, again there is one more parameter. It depends on the profile. US, even with 2 years to 4, 2 years work experience, you could still apply. There are other countries like UK and maybe Singapore. They require at least 3 years. On the other hand, Europe, which is also coming up as a big hub, they would prefer people in the middle management, work ex level. These courses are again 10 months to 1 year. Okay, but they would prefer people who have, been doing, team management. So you have about 4-5 years work experience and then you apply. Because then you don't need to, know the core of management. You just need to, do some retooling and, get into the specialized course. Okay, so the likes of NCR and all that you hear, these universities would require you to have at least 5 years work experience. Okay, so each place has its own way of looking at, the profiles as well.
There is a query. Public policy courses, Harvard University, admission.
Anybody?
And student wrote, ask them not to write their names.
Okay.
So how to get admission into public policy courses, Harvard?
You need to basically have some awareness of, having done some courses in public policy, like for example, maybe economics could be, some courses, political science. If you have done a bachelor's related to that, you need to take, the GRE into TOEFL, as far as, the entrance exams are concerned. And, try and see if you can, do a lot many more projects or internships related to public policy. Whatever, you could lay your hands on, maybe a publication or, presentation also would help you in terms of gaining admission. You need to gear your profile to, public policy. Yeah, so these were the parameters that we discussed. Right? First one, not only on rankings, do not go on say, because your uncles and your cousins and all would have had their own different experience, or their profile would have been different. And most of the time students say, ma'am, look, I have had lots of friends who have gone. They can guide me. But they will be able to guide you only based on their experience, no? Whatever universities they have applied to, whether they will suit you. Are your goals in sync with their goals? Each one of you sitting in this class is going to be different. And would be thinking of it in a different way. Why you want to do further studies. So you need to first analyze that. You can't just pull off university list from forums or from your from your seniors, because they would have, even if the matrix, even the acads have been similar or they've been from the same college. You need to do it in a more scientific way, like what we've seen before. Analyze your needs. Does that program actually satisfy your requirements of doing it? Is it worth the time, money, and energy spent? At the end of the day, what am I gaining after 2 years? Whether it suits your career goals. But then I would have a question there. How many of you are very clear about your career goals? Not even half?
No, that is expected.
This is whether it's an Indian B school or whether you're applying abroad, this is the question that you need to be able to answer. And start introspecting, guys, from right now. Because to get selected for the interviews, they are going to ask you this question. And nobody can help you on this, because it can't be spoon-fed. It has to be your own goal. Because again, look at it this way, you are going to be looking at it from a point of view of your career. And it is going to stay with you, it is going to be staying with you for 40 years of your life. So can you compromise on that? There is no backtracking. Once you decide, that's it. You should be happy with it. You should be, you will be doing that same job, day in and day out, every day. So start thinking about that right from now. Yeah, of course, this is as far as the B school is concerned. We discussed this. Some of you have already told me reputation, ranking, location, length of the program, the alumni, faculty. Right? These were some of the parameters. Next, some top ones. Again, this is again the ranking thing. Okay, these are only two ways of ranking that I have put across. There would be n number of rankings, sites that you will have. What do you do then? If you were to decide only on ranking, then you will again be in a dilemma, because every survey has a different set of ranking. Next, this is Business Week. You have Financial Times ranking as well. This is what we discussed at length. I guess you have no questions on this, right? Online application, we've discussed this at length. Any questions on that? Your scores, your recommendation letters, your essays, we've discussed at length. And the form in general, it's about you as a person. Okay. Yeah. See, this is just for the universities to know that if you are admitted as a student, if you get an admission, then you will be able to bear the cost as far as the cost of the education is concerned. So they just want an assurity from your end that if you are given the admission, then you will be able to bear the cost. That's just an assurance letter that you are sending them. It's a solvency certificate that you will be sending. It does not mean that you need to have the money physically present in the bank at that point of time when you're sending the application. It just means that whoever is supporting you, your sponsor, your parents, should be able to have those kinds of assets to be able to support your education. Now again, let me point out here, this does not have any bearing on your scholarships. Please mind it. Because like I told you previously, your scholarships are purely based on merit as an international student. They are not based on need. Of course, unlike what happens in ISB. ISB also does have some reservations for need-based scholarships as well. But all the other global schools, it is based purely on merit. Merit which comes from the admission criteria that you see. Your CAT, your scores and everything else. Right? Is it clear? So if you think that I sent the financial documents and these guys are not going to give me any scholarship, then that's not the way it is. Financial documents is a different way of looking at it. It's just an assurity. Okay? Again, I don't have to emphasize on this. You will send a resume, which is a summary of your profile. Certain things which you need to remember as far as the resume is concerned for a B school application is that it has to be very concise and crisp document. A one-pager. Even if you have 10 years of work experience, you still need to submit a one-page resume. Okay, so because there are only certain things that you need to highlight there. You don't have to put the entire history geography there. Okay, very clear. Then of course your marks cards in a certain format. Recommendation letters. Now everything is about you. You talking about yourself. Let somebody else rate you. They want people's opinion about you. So that's what the recommendation letters do. Now remember your recommendation letters, it's not about the CEO giving the recommendation letter to you. Okay? Because the CEO is not going to be able to write more than 2 lines about you if you have not interacted with him or her directly. It's about how people look at you as an employee or a student if you are getting academic ones. They should be able to comment on your day-to-day activities. Okay, that's very important there. Okay. So it's more about the interaction level, what he or she writes. It's not about their qualification or their designation. Please bear this in mind. So don't keep running behind PhD guys, people who are doctoral degrees and stuff like that. If they have not had any, also these cannot be from the peers. The recommendation letters cannot be from people with the same level as you are. It has to necessarily be from people who are senior in the organization. Okay.
And it has to be, I mean, is it necessary that it should be only reporting manager, or
They would prefer that. Because if you do not give them recommendations from a reporting manager, then they would have their own questions. I understand that it is difficult to disclose it to your reporting manager, but then again you have to find ways. If not the reporting manager, maybe somebody else from another department whom you have interacted with, or worst case as a backup you could take it from clients if you had any clients that you interact with. Clients or maybe an on-site coordinator, that will also do. But try as much as possible to take it from an immediate supervisor.
Your pressure just ensure that.
Academics.
So teachers.
Yeah, teachers can help. Again, if you are applying for management related courses like MS management, you can try and take recommendation from internships, where you've done internships, which will also display your team skills and leadership skills. Okay. Yeah, so this is very important. Yeah, just try it. Essays, it's your personal, personal space. So make it as personal as possible. Because you need to be able to connect with the admissions committee, as a person, not on very superficial. And everything that you mention there, it should be then cited with examples and experiences. Okay. See, essays are a way of bringing your whole application to life. It's as if you don't get a chance to interact and make that impact. So think of it as your chance to as if you're interacting with the admission committee. You're trying to put real life situations into on paper. So make them interesting. For example, if you're just talking about an achievement, it could be achievement. I mean, all of us meet deadlines, right? I mean, we all do that in our everyday life. We work, academics, wherever. If you're talking about meeting a deadline, let's say at your workplace, then that could be an achievement to you because you've done it under certain circumstances. But when you write it as meeting a deadline on a piece of paper, it loses all its charm. You can't just say simply that I've met this deadline and that's the reason I've been glorified in the office. You need to then put it down very clearly how you have gone about doing it, under what circumstances. Maybe you had a resource crunch. You were new to the technology, or you had 10 other people sitting on your head to deliver that thing, or maybe you had gone on site. You had a different business culture. All of that. So describe as much as possible under what circumstances you call it an achievement. Otherwise, the person who's reading it, for him, it's just meeting a deadline. I mean, come on, we do that every day. So it's lost. That's what I mean by how you're going to be positioning yourself. And of course, you have to highlight what your involvement has been. Were you the sole person? You did everything single-handedly, or were you leading the whole situation? How did you put yourself in that situation? What was your position in that? So that is very important. Otherwise, just on paper, if you say I met the deadline, that's why I got Star of the Month award. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't ring any bells. Right? So that's very important as far as your essays are concerned. Yeah. So this is very important, which I wanted to emphasize. It's a combination of things. Guys, understand? It's like I said. It's a summation in your mathematical terms. It's not one single factor that counts over the other. So if I have low academics, I can't afford to sit and cry over that now. Maybe I could try to improvise something else, isn't it? So maybe I should work hard on the GMAT or the GRE. Try to make up on that. Okay, if I have I don't have any work experience, maybe I have other extracurricular activities. Maybe I can highlight those. There could be some way of presenting yourself in a better way. So it's a combination of all these factors that we're looking at. Anything and everything could count. You might think it's very small, but just see if it makes difference to your profile. Knowing a second language, how many of us know that? Not many. So if you know a second language, then please mention it. I'm not talking about the Indian languages. I know all of us know multiple. Okay, so see that there would be an international exposure. Maybe you've gone on an exchange program, anything of that sort. Maybe you've gone and presented a paper elsewhere. So that's also international exposure. So not many would have had that. So just try and figure out how best you are going to be unique to that, to that application that you're making. Now again, this is what I told you. It's always plus or minus 50 here and there. It's not, a number that we're looking at. Okay, it's always, depending on an average that's reflected. So give it only that much importance. Don't sit and cry and brood over scores. I would rather say, if you think, because not all, I'm not putting it in a very negative way. Maybe all of us are not made for that aptitude exam. Or maybe something just goes wrong on that day. Those 4 hours were not, meant for you. You just fall sick. What could you do? You're prepared, in the best possible way. You can sit and, cry over that. Maybe you can make an effort in improvising other things. Present your application, maybe apply to 2-3 more extra universities. That way you increase the probability. Right? Put your energy and effort there. See, unless retaking the test is only worth it if you can improve your score by 50 plus points. Just because the test is conducted every day doesn't mean you keep on repeating it, isn't it? Instead, you can channelize that energy in the application presentation, right? Because the scores only form 30% of the application. I'm just giving you, a statistics, right? So give it only that much importance as such. Don't, say, think that it's the end of the world. Again, these things we have already discussed. Ideally, whom you trust. Now you can't take it from the CEO and he says, oh, this guy is a jerk. I don't, think he's fit to, just because he's a CEO, you take it, from him, and then you, realize, oh, I'm not being in the best of his books. So he ends up writing a very, bad recommendation letter and spoils the entire application for you. So see that, you are very sure about what these guys are going to write. Why work experience is important? I have explained that. It's basically because you go there with some kind of industry exposure. It it gives you that real life experiences. That's what it will help you relate better to the class, and to the people around you. You will be able to see, because most of your B school program is all about case studies and discussions, classroom discussions. So if you have not had those experiences, what are you going to do in that class? You will not have anything to contribute. Right? So, which is why it becomes important. And then extracurricular activities. Again, this voluntary work, and I get n number of queries. I've never done anything of this sort. Now, should I start doing something, some kind of community activity now? I mean, each of us cannot be Mother Teresa, right? It has to be within you. If you have not been doing it all this while, you can't suddenly start doing something, just for the application. See, because this will be understood by the admissions guys. Because all of a sudden you started doing something new. So don't try. Instead, try and highlight what you've done before. Or maybe you've been playing some musical instrument. You've given it up for some time. Take that up again. Those things will help you. But it's not like it's a must that everybody should have everything of this. You're getting my point. Okay? And very important, needless to say, you need to have an action plan. I mean, I would say, Anil would say 10 things, but when we go out of this room, 8 of these things are forgotten.
No, I'll never make them forget. True, they can forget, they will not forget.
You definitely have to have something that you action out. Otherwise, it's, see, like I said, it's one other option that you can open up for yourself, because this time that you have right now, I mean, the age that you are in right now, you're not going to get it back again. Believe it or not. What's the average age? 22, 23?
So including me, it will increase.
22, 23 only once in life, isn't it? So you should keep your options open. Don't close off options, because this is the time, this is the deciding stage of your career. You shut the doors, you basically don't want to come back to it again, right? I mean, you would not get this thing again. And I mean, as the popular saying goes, right? Opportunity knocks only once. Sees shut doors, goes back. You never get that opportunity again. So you should not regret this again later on. Maybe 4-5 years down the line. Okay, so if you've decided that yes, you want to go for higher studies, keep all your options open. It does sound like a daunting task, but it is not. I'm sure I've kind of simplified it for you. It's just that you need proper planning as much as possible. Okay. So 3 things: test prep, the documentation, and the selection of the school. That's all that there is. There are only 3 things that you need to do. Like I said, there are lots of see, for example, don't look at it this way that always work backwards. Like I said, always have an aim in mind. Let's say I want to get into Harvard, but don't be put off because Harvard is costs so much. Okay, look at it this way: if I get into Harvard, I will have all the uncles and the aunts of the world to come and support me. Don't you think? They'll want to become your sponsors, right? Because they would want to also proudly say that, okay, look, my nephew or my niece is studying in Harvard. So you would get sponsored that way. You would also have loans and lots of options that would be available to you to get into the best of the school. First aim is to get into the good school, and then everything else will fall in place. Instead, we look at it the other way around, which is not something that's recommended. Again, some of the websites for your test prep. MBA.com is for GMAT. GRE.org is for your GRE. IELTSindia.com is for your IELTS. You can just take down quickly. And TOEFL is for the TOEFL test. TOEFL and IELTS are language exams which you need to take in addition to your GRE GMAT. GRE GMAT, like I said, are aptitude exams which are verbal and con. Whereas TOEFL and IELTS are the English exams. They don't have con.
That is not mandatory for GMAT.
They are mandatory not for ISB, but if you are applying to university abroad, because English is not our native language. It's a secondary language to us. Okay. Some schools would waive it off if you have studied in the English medium, but again, it's a very simple test. So if you have studied for GRE and GMAT, this becomes a piece of cake because it's only English. Okay. Again, these are conducted all the year round, so there's no problem with the dates. Some of the students who got into good universities,
Now comes the most important part. What exams can I prepare for this year except CAT and ZAT to get into a good B school in India? B school in India, I will take care of it. Okay. For the preparation, how to get good score in GK section. Okay. That we will take care of it. Schools that pick students based on GMAT score in India. Good B schools.
you have SPJ, you have ISB, you have XLRI. Okay, and there is a whole list of around 20 other universities that these days take universities for based on the GMAT. You could look at few other options as well. And like I said, as far as the preparation is concerned, it's quite at par. It's just that you need to work on the verbal skills.
For XLRI, both GMAT and ZAT.
Yeah.
For foreigners.
SPJ also takes both.
Okay. The student who asked this question, please give your email ID to Kalyan immediately after the session is over. By today evening, we will send a document in detail talking about the programs taken from the website. Right?
There
The student who asked the question,
around 20 schools.
right, we might miss out something. If they got a document, it will be ready. Please send a mail. Please give your mail ID to Kalyan immediately. If you don't give it, you will not get it.
The details are on MBA.com. MBA.com website has this.
Really, GMAT station is except IIT. Remaining all institutes take it as a foreigners to
No, NRI quota is different. Other than that also, there are certain other universities which will accept yes.
Kalyan, carry it forward.
It's on MBA.com. You have the list of Indian universities, there's a whole list. Which is,
but
Yeah, if you're looking at universities abroad, you need minimum of 2 years of work experience, definitely.
Not in India also.
No, that program that you're talking about, there are 2 programs as far as SPJ is concerned. There's one for the freshers and there's one which is for 3 years working. That's the DNC that we're talking about. That's a 1-year program. Now that requires 3 years working experience. That's a totally different program. That takes only GMAT. That's a global management program, which is across Dubai, Singapore, that one. That requires 3 years. But your normal program wouldn't require working. But again, globally, if you look at it, all the